Welcome to Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management, a weekly conversation with area leaders about how to persevere during uncertain times. Now here's your host, Gary Shorman.
Hi, and welcome to Forward Ever. Great to have you listening along today, as our guest is Dallas Haselhorst, a native of the Hayes area, but frankly, he and his wife are doing some special stuff. Dallas, welcome to our program today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gary. Always appreciate it.
You know what? I had a chance to tour your facilities, and it's called STEM Harvest. What is STEM Harvest? For those people, one, who may not know what STEM we're talking about, but how did you put it together with STEM Harvest?
Yeah, so STEM Harvest is really an idea that we've had for almost a decade now. That may or may not coincide with the age of my oldest daughter. But really, it comes down to the um, providing every child the opportunity to learn more about tech, to never be scared of technical, new technologies, any sort of technical problems, um, really kind of help them gain some better understanding. And, we're not trying to create, a world of coders or programmers or anything like that, but instead to where, they can take those newfound skills and apply it to really any sort of job that's out there, whether that's in construction. I mean, it doesn't matter. Those technology skills translate well to really every facet of life.
So, Dallas, as you put this together and try to help people do this, this is for kids. Or when you're talking about learning technology, I'm thinking there might be some adults that would like to fit in with your program, but this is focused at those kids. What will they actually be learning?
Sure. So the three core tenets really of STEM Harvest, and which is a 501c3 nonprofit. Um, but the three core tenets of STEM Harvest is really to learn coding, learning electronics, and then learning 3D printing. Now, if you think about it in that aspect, you combine those three items, and now a kid really has an opportunity to do fast track prototyping, to really start manufacturing some true, real world, in your hands products. And like I said, hopefully get them the skill set to where they can, stay right here in Hayes and build up a company, a new great idea, or they can turn around, maybe do some remote work. There's lots of opportunities once you have those skill sets, but really it's just trying to get them to not fear technology and learn a little bit more about it.
Now, when you talk about the idea that where this came from, is this something that came out of COVID?
No, actually, it's really not. I mean, lots of new things came out of COVID for sure, but no, there's a lot of STEM centers really kind of around the world, around the United States, and I know a lot of people that have started them. For instance, Kansas City, I think, has maybe nine or so of them last time I counted. Very similar things. They might delve more into kind of the sciencey aspect of things, and there's even makerspace is something else that kind of gets thrown around a lot, terminology. And so those maker spaces, they may get into skills such as sewing. I mean, valuable life skills, don't get me wrong, but we're trying to focus more on the tech side of things. Like I said, that coding, 3D printing, and electronics.
Now, I know you deal in the world of electronics and coding and that sort of thing all the time in real life. Is that where this idea came from?
Yeah, it's so really, if you go back to even as a kid growing up, my dad actually introduced me to things like soldering really early on. I mean, 6, 7 years old, I was soldering. Fast forward to just a few years ago, and as we're starting to suss out some of these things and really see what our own girls are interested in. Lo and behold, our 6-year-old, our 8-year-old love soldering. So they, like I said, my dad introduced that to me, so I passed it on to them. Of course, we did some other things like coding and things of that nature, which STEM has traditionally a problem with, being male dominated. And so really it comes down to, if you're good enough at something, especially, on that STEM side, the coding side, any of those things, um, I really wanted them the opportunity to never be told no just because of their gender or anything like that.
When I toured your building, I want you to talk about what you're doing there, how you're doing that. But what impressed me is you started the project and along with your wife's help, and then all of a sudden she said, "This is really cool," and has jumped in and is really your partner in this project.
Yeah, well, she's my partner in a lot of things. She keeps me from going off the deep end sometimes. But yeah, so when we first started looking for a building, it was really about 6,000 square feet is what we were going to need for the STEM Center as well as Treetop, my own company, cybersecurity company, and um, went through a couple of different issues, trying to find some space. And as you know, in Hayes, there's not a lot of commercial property that's 6,000 square feet. Um, when the old Hayes Daily News building, that opportunity came up, we took a look at it. It was way more than we needed, but we thought, well, what else can we do with this? So um, the STEM Center itself ends up, instead of being about 4,000 square feet, will be about 5,000 square feet, just based off of where walls and things like that are. But yeah, so as we're going through this, weren't able to receive a few grants early on. And so my wife said, well, you have that operating line, or that operating expense of having a director, because, we can't do everything. And she said, well, I would love to help out. And she's a nursing home administrator at the time. And I was like, well, that seems like a bit of a leap, but okay, you just need someone to kind of herd the cat, so to speak. So she started looking at things, and she's like, well, I really need to get into this. Our girls do it, but I don't do any of this stuff. And all of a sudden she's going, this is really cool. I thought you were kind of crazy, but this is amazing. And she's doing 3D prints. She's doing some of the coding projects. And so she's now excited about it, which definitely helps with her being an unpaid director position. But yeah, she's absolutely a guiding force in a lot of this.
Where are you in the construction and rebuilding? Because Hayes Daily News, that old building, was built to print newspapers and do all that, a whole different industry. What are you having to do to rebuild that and redesign that, maybe even reimagine that building?
Yeah, there was a definitely a vision for what we could do, and in a lot of ways, it hasn't changed. But we've been fairly flexible to make sure that we're not going to get killed on construction costs either. So there was actually a lot of demo, especially in that STEM space. There was a ton of demo. There was actually about 3 or 4 additional rooms that had to be taken out. So it actually went back to we've looked at some of the architectural plans from the 1970s. We're actually closer to what they were in the 1970s than what they were when we initially purchased it. So lots of demo, because there are a couple of open classroom spaces. And then we have some breakout rooms, some conference rooms for different things that people can do as well. But yeah, there's a little bit left as far as the construction side, but really the demo was, I'm going to say 90% of it.
Did you find any secret rooms left over from the old newspaper business?
I don't know about secret rooms. We did find a lot of artifacts which we have managed to save, part of Hayes and Western Kansas history. So we're excited at some point. Once again, the 3 front spaces on Main Street and then the STEM space, there's really, it's a giant building. It's about 18,500 square feet. And so if you start looking at that, we're only about 60% in just with all of these items. So hopefully in that back 40%, we can do some fun things and share some of that history that we've uncovered here.
When do you plan to get the first students through?
Yeah, good question. So the we've already spoke with the city of Hayes. So we essentially have two sections really to the STEM space. We have a north side and a south side. Um, the north side requires a bit more on the construction aspect of things, so which also includes costs. On that south side, there's not going to be a whole lot left to do. And as a result, I spoke with the city. They're going to allow us a temporary certificate of occupancy for that area, so we can start kind of doing some like almost a soft opening, have some classes here and there, and kind of do some of those things to where people start getting excited about it. And I mean, there's enough excitement already. I almost feel like we have an obligation to the community at this point. But there's just to get some kids going, wow, this is really neat. I didn't know I could tear apart a computer and all the aspects of a computer. So there's a lot of things that we'll be able to do, but like I said, we need to get that initial opening done. We originally thought we might still try to hit by the end of the year for that soft opening on the south side, and I think we're probably going to be closer to the first part of next year.
Well, Dallas, this is exciting. I know you have a vision for what you want to see coming out of this. We need to take a quick break, come back and talk about where you see students coming out, what you see them doing, and then maybe tell people who are listening and watching out there how they can maybe get someone signed up, someone they know, a grandkid, son, etc., get them doing it. Let's take a quick break. Our guest is Dallas Haselhorst. He's with STEM Harvest. Back with more after this.
The most successful investors are those that can keep their emotions in check and take a longer-term view at what portfolios will be worth 3 to 5 years down the road. I'd say that's the most important in determining what investor outcomes are. Market corrections will continue in the future. We've seen many of them over the years, only to see equity prices rise higher, and that'll be the case in the future.
Worth Wealth Management, enhancing lives and strengthening families.
Welcome back to Forward Ever with our guest, Dallas Haselhorst, STEM Harvest, a brand new project taking place on South Main in Hayes. The old Hayes Daily News building is being repurposed. And Dallas, we went into the break talking about the vision going forward. What do you see 3-4 years down the road? What would you like to see coming out of the STEM Harvest program?
Really, obviously an increase in skill sets, but a transformation. This can absolutely be a transformative project for the entire community. And by that, I mean, all of a sudden we have some new projects, some new companies eventually coming out of this. And I don't think that's not something I take lightly, but it's absolutely something I see in the near future where some kid 10 years from now, which obviously would no longer be a kid, but 10 years from now, they point back to, wow, I was in there, I took a few classes, and boy, that just changed my entire career trajectory.
How is this different than maybe some of the other STEM projects? University has a STEM project. There's some others around the state that are out there doing that. What's the difference?
Yeah, in some ways, there's no difference. In other ways, there's a lot of difference. So we're taking very much a project-based approach. And by that, going back to those core tenets that we had discussed, is once you get past those things and you kind of have the basics, once you get past those items, you really have kind of a whole world of opportunities open up to you. And so a kid can come back, the project that I always discuss is there's a working 100% Iron Man mask, from the Marvel universe. And that's something that a kid can come in, 3D print, put some electronics in, you have to do a little bit of coding, and all of a sudden they have this working Iron Man mask. They push a button, the head flips up, they push the button, the head flips back down, and people are going, wow, that must be really, really expensive. No, it's about $20 worth of parts. It's a lot of hours, but here's the deal is you have a kid that's already excited about that. They're now learning how to 3D print, how to resize things on the 3D printer. They're learning how to do those electronics. They're learning how to code. They don't even realize it. So you're getting them to do some of those things. And I just use that Iron Man example there's hundreds of thousands of other step-by-step projects that, we just, had Halloween here recently. You could have something, a working skull that speaks to you as somebody gets closer to it. I mean, little things like that, like I said, a kid doesn't even realize really that they're learning in that process, but man, it sure is fun. And they're building those skill sets to where they're having to troubleshoot, they're having to do critical thinking. And then, like I said, just the general knowledge that they're gaining in those different tenets really will pay off in the long run.
You have a website, and I want to ask, how people can get involved. You have a website. Talk about that, but also talk about, you have a video that kind of explains some of this. It's really pretty cool.
Yeah, so stemharvest.org is the website. Yeah, it kind of dives into really the vision, what we see coming out of it. But yeah, also a kind of a teaser video showing some of the things that kids will have the opportunity to work on. We do have a newsletter sign up, which, whether that means you're interested in it from, we've had a lot of school districts, both here in Hayes and in a lot of surrounding communities. So if you're, in that school district and you think maybe you want to do a day trip at some point, sign up for that newsletter. You can start learning more about it, make sure that you're kind of staying abreast of what we're doing. But then also, if donors, sponsorships, that's something that we haven't talked a lot about, but there's an opportunity for a lot of corporate sponsorships, to where, if your company is interested in this, or you want to make sure that, this is something that we can continue going, well after grants and everything else fall by the wayside, those sponsorships, you'll get on the various televisions and monitors around the event space. We'll bring in STEM speakers from time to time. You'll get, recognition at the beginning of every one of those talks that occur. Then any sort of printed materials, whether that's t-shirts, just printed collateral on paper, all those sponsorships would be then listed on there for the next year as well.
Well, Dallas, I think you guys have a great project going down there. Appreciate the work that you guys have, because I don't know if you have a lot of contractors, or you, your wife, your daughters are getting all this done, but you put a lot of work into this.
It's a lot of work, but it will absolutely be worth it. I can assure you that.
Dallas, thanks for joining me today on Forward Ever.
All right. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
Our guest today has been Dallas Haselhorst with STEM Harvest, a new project on South Main in Hayes, Kansas. I hope you get a chance to log on to their website. That's stemharvest.org. Check that out. Check out their video. It'll tell you more about it. And thanks for listening to Forward Ever. It's brought to you by Worth Wealth Management, where you can live with confidence. I'm Gary Shorman.
Thanks for joining us for Forward Ever, Leading in Challenging Times, presented by Worth Wealth Management. Join us right here next week for another episode with host Gary Shorman. Until then, remember to move forward ever, backward never.